Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over today's tennis slate um, in an attempt to kind of share my process with you and using this slate as an example. And with respect to lineup builds, I guess unfortunately, Sabersim does not support tennis yet. So maybe in a way to kind of nudge them into getting off their ass and doing so, I'm going to be using Roto Grinders HQ to build the lineups today and give Roto Grinders HQ some love, because I've used Roto Grinders HQ for forever and I still use them from time to time. And that's the best, as far as I'm concerned, for building tennis lineups, given what there is. So we're going to go back and forth between my Sheets and Roto Grinders HQ, and go over a couple of ways that I think you could build tennis lineups. So what I'm starting with is the sheets, which I've taken right from the site right now. And again, for those that are unfamiliar, this is kind of an industry aggregate of fantasy point projections and ownership projections that are kind of based on certain weightings of different sources, based on how they've done in the past and things like that. I'll get into the drill down of that one of these days. But nonetheless, I tend to rank them by this metric called Sheets Value Score, which combines fantasy points and points per dollar in a kind of intelligent way. For those of you, since Roto Grinder is going to be kind of the theme of this one, are familiar with RGV, they have their own kind of way of adjusting for upside and adjusting for points per dollar, as opposed to pure fantasy points. And my Sheets Value Score is a different way of doing that, which I feel comfortable with. In any case, I'm ranking everybody by Sheets Value Score. So before we even get into the lineup builds, we're going to take kind of a look at it and see what this looks like. And you see that at the top, Berrettini and Fritz look like the best plays. And you'll also see that they look to be the highest owned, which certainly makes some sense. And tennis is usually somewhat efficient when it comes to ownership. As you'll see, if I rank them by Sheets Value Score, the ownership is sort of very, very familiar as they go down the list. The one you'll see that's highly owned, that is not as rated as high, is perhaps Tommy Paul. So in my head, I'm thinking that maybe doing something like playing de Minaur as leverage against him makes some sense. Where is he over there? Is he even in the list? Hang on a minute. There he is. Oh, Bubic. Oh, de Minaur. Okay. Oh, there it is. So this actually could be already something to kind of look out for, is to maybe play de Minaur as leverage off of Tommy Paul. Tommy Paul is going to be 30%. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this. When we rank these by point per dollar for the day, and again, this is all a background before we actually build lineups, you'll see that John Isner rates to be an extremely strong play. And the reason why is because he has an incredible ace upside. So when he wins, you get a good score. And even when he loses, you probably get an okay score. And when you're at a short slate, we only have 14 matches, it is possible that you can win without going 6 for 6. So this is going to be a very popular play as well. As you could see, he's one of the highest owned players on the slate, about 35%. So, one thing you could also consider, if you want, is to play Diego Schwartzman, right, as leverage off of Isner. And although he's not the greatest ranked player, again, I think that leverage certainly means something. So what you do is you have all these numbers, and then we're going to go and use Roto Grinders to upload them and et cetera. So the first thing I want to do is I want to upload these projections and replace the RG projections. And I have my own file names, which you won't recognize. But you could download the file from TrueDFS and get a file that looks like this. I'm going to name it March 15th. Then we're going to upload it. You'll see it over there. And then here within RG, we're going to put use for both fantasy points and PON. So it replaced their fantasy points with and PON with mine. And so now we're kind of ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to build just like normal to see what it is. So we're going to build our 30 lineups, and we're just going to go like this, boom. Okay. So the first thing I want to do when I get this is I want to look at the ownership that I get from this. And not surprisingly, you get Isner at 100% owned. And then interestingly, the next guy is Fritz at 67. I usually get a little bit higher ownership on somebody else as opposed to just one guy, which is interesting to me. So one thing you could do is just kind of just take these 30 and fire them off. But you could be a little bit more intelligent about that. So like the first thing I want to do is let's look at the ownership of these lineups. So you get the sum of PON, which is 175, 170. This is actually very pretty reasonable. Okay, it's not overwhelmingly chalky. One thing I will notice is that the top two lineups are not the two highest owned. Now, again, these are all projections, so these are not, the confidence level in PON is not great, but it's not terrible. So you could, if you wanted to, just pile in these first two, and really be well within your rights. You know what I mean? Because not only are you getting the highest projected, but you're also not having the two highest owned. So if you're only playing one lineup or two, you could certainly just do that. Okay. But one thing you could do if you wanted to, and this is one thing you could do within HQ, you use this with our optimizer also, is you can go into build rules and do a maximum total lineup ownership percentage. And usually what I like, again, depends on slates, but on a slate like this, I would say 150 could be the definition of kind of a low owned type lineup. So, you know what, I forgot to do something. Let me go back into my lineups for a second. I want to see what these guys all project at. So we're talking about projections anywhere between 324 down to 322. So the first thing you'll notice is that it's really close. Okay. So you could, right, really go with any of these and be well within your, theoretical rights. The other thing you can do, knowing that, it's really close between lineup 1 and lineup 30, is that let's say you were going to play somewhere between 0 and 30 lineups, you could really just pick the lineups that are just the top, the low 15 in PO, like only take, those which are below like 180, for example, and if you did that, you're not really giving up too much in projection equity, but you're still capturing that, that ownership discount. Like the other thing you can look at is, you look at lineup 10. Lineup 10, it's the 10th rated lineup, and from an ownership perspective, it's significantly lower than the others. So maybe this is the one that you'd want to identify as the one lineup you'd play if you're a one lineup type of player. And that's really what I do when it comes to selecting, for example, which one I'm going to put in say the single entry, is I'll have my list up here, and then I'll just eyeball it and say, okay, is there any lineup which is close to the top one, which is going to be lower owned than the other? So it's very possible I end up, maybe going with this guy. We still have 100 hours, quite a while to go to lock, but that's something to really think about. So as I said, another thing you could do if you wanted is go within build rules and change it to say max total ownership, make it even lower than these others. So let's just do this. Let's put max total ownership 150. So we'll build 30 that way, and let's just see what that does. So one thing you'll notice that it does is it really drops the average projection to like 10 full points. And to me, that's kind of a big deal. So on a slate like this, maybe you shouldn't be going all the way down to 150 as far as ownership, because you're just giving up way too much, in my opinion, as far as projection equity. So let's go back now to this other build. Let's go back to build 2, where we're just going to just operate within these. Let's then go back into that leverage discussion we had before. Like, we wanted to make sure that we played some of whoever Tommy Paul plays and whoever Isner plays. So Tommy Paul is playing de Minaur. Let's see how many de Minaurs we have. We don't have any with de Minaur. Let's see how many Schwartzmans we have. We don't have any with Schwartzman. So in 30 lineups, just for the sake of having some leverage over those high-owned players, I think that we should probably, put like a minimum exposure over here. So let's just say that for de Minaur, let's put in, say, 30, like 30%. And again, we know we're already doing, right? So if we put in 30%, that's going to be how many lineups, right? It's going to end up being 9. If you're not comfortable with that, put a minimum of 20. And I promise you, if you put a minimum of 20, you're going to get exactly 20 because they wanted to give you 0, right? Makes sense. And with respect to his opponent, Schwartzman, where is he? So de Minaur only had 1. So he had 1, we just want to make it 20. So let's make, we got to go back in the player pool then and find Schwartzman. He wasn't listed in any lineup. So let's make him 20. So put 20% Schwartzman and 20% de Minaur, and now we'll rebuild. Now what you end up with is now you're getting more Rublev, right? Because if you're dropping from 100% Isner, right? Now, how much Isner are we getting now? We did have 100%, and now we're only getting 3, which is very interesting, actually. Well, we don't want that. We're giving up way too much projection equity, giving up the best player on the board. Makes sense. So let's go back into player 3 for a second. One thing you could do is you take 2 different builds. So you have this is the original build, right? No, build was 2 the original build. So what we can do is let's put in, instead of 20% de Minaur and whatever 30% Schwartzman, what you could do is you could do a rule. We could call we could build like a leverage rule. So build rule, let's put player groups. So no player groups, create player groups. So we're going to click in here. Wait, let's create new group. Let's find the player. Let's find a Schwartzman, right? That was leverage play number 1. And then we'll use, let's play another one, de Minaur, right? De Minaur. Wait, de Minaur, and then we'll use Schwartzman. Okay, so player 2, we have 2 players. We want to use at least 1 to 2. So that means every lineup is going to have either de Minaur or Schwartz. Okay. Now let's say though you don't want to use it for all 30. Let's say you don't want to just be relying on both these plays, one of these plays in all of your lineups. What you could do, and you could set it for a percentage. What I like to do is I'll put that in only 15 lineups. So in 15 of 30 lineups, I'll make that rule that you got to use at least one of Schwartzman or de Minaur. Let's see how many we get. Schwartzman 1, de Minaur, Schwartzman. So they really don't want me to play de Minaur. There's de Minaur over there. There's de Minaur over there. So we're doing a pretty decent job of it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these lineups. Okay. Save this in all lineups below, and that gets put in this saved lineups category, which is very important. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into that main build, which was build 2, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the top 15 of these that we like, Well, the first thing I want to do is let's save all of these to saved lineups. Okay, so we're going to take this, save all these in lineups below into saved lineups. So now we have 45 lineups. So we have 30, the original 30, and then we have the others that, have all of, whatchamacallit, at least one leverage play. So what we have here is now 45 lineups. 33% of them have some leverage in them, and 67% don't. And now if I'm going to want to play 30 lineups, what I'm going to want to do is, again, I could either do an ownership fade, or I could just go hand by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it from an ownership perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just taking out the ones with 190 and below and above. So let's see, I saw one. Let's get rid of that one. Is that just it? It's the only one over 190? Yeah, it looks that way. Here's another one under 190, over 190, get rid of that one. And again, I haven't really done any work on the actual players. That was all done previously. 185, 175, 190. Do that. I'm sure there are better ways to do this using the actual filters, but with this 189, we're going to say close enough. And now I know that one's going to win. 180. Look at this guy. This guy 147. It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. And then 148, 148, 148. So these are obviously the ones with leverage because they're projecting pretty poorly, right? That's fine. All these leverage ones, not surprisingly, are projecting poorly. So now we have 40 lineups. Now within here, it's giving you the ownership. And so Rublev is going to end up being the highest owned player, followed by Isner. Okay. So you have 40 lineups. You got to figure out some way to whittle it down. We could also do 185. Do that as the next one. So we're going to do is we're going to start as far as ownership goes. Let's go down to the lowest rated lineups that are highly owned. So here you go. 186. We'll get rid of that one. 187. We'll get rid of that. So now what are we down to? Now we're down to 38. This is why I like SaberSim as well. But then we'll go down to the bottom of the barrel of maybe these leverage ones and see if there's any that has a really, really low projection. No, they all look very similar. So all these leverage lineups are looking very, very, very similar. Here's a 380, 186 own. And again, this is, look, these ownership projections are not, the end all be all, I have to say. But I'm willing to roll with them. And this one, 184, get rid of that one. So maybe we'll go ahead and play 37 lineups. No, I still want to limit it. This one's 186. Peon, we don't like that. And so on. So then what we'll do, again, just to kind of finish it off, is we'll export this to CSV. And then upload it to tennis, my lineups. And now what you're going to see, by the way, is all of my lineups, including the ones I built earlier within this list. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's go to, let's say, take the tennis slate here. Tennis, where are we? Tennis. Locked. Yeah, okay, so I can't. All right, so the tournament's already locked, but so you'll see I have 45 lineups that I could use in total. in this. But what's interesting is that what about the ones that I'm already in? So like right now, for example, I'm in these, and if I wanted to edit these, I only played 30 lineups, so I would have to take out 5 of them. And I think I'm going to do that actually. So let's just say, just as almost as an experiment, let's go back to RG. We're going to take our 36 lineups. We're going to export them. We're going to take them. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to cut them here. Copy them here. I don't want to paste them here. We'll get rid of that. Actually, that's okay. Take them here. Take the top lineup. We're going to put it in the 222 for now. And then I'm obviously going to change this after we do this. But this is, you ask my processes, and this is what it is when I use, especially when I use the roto grinders. And we'll upload the entries. Now, there's a couple of other things that you could do with this slate, and I want to show you what that is. Okay, so let's go back into player pool and build rules. One thing you could do if you want. Now, I am not as big of a fan of this, especially in tennis, as other sports. But what you can do is use this number of unique players tool, or of course this max exposure tool. Like if for whatever reason you don't like the 100% Isner, you could change this. I don't usually mess around with the salary thing. I really don't. In showdowns, I might limit salary, but not here. And range of outcomes, if you want, you could randomize this a little bit by going from 0 up to as much as you want. You can use 35, 42%. For whatever reason in tennis, I just don't use this as much as I should. Again, I'm not quite as well versed with the HQ as I am with SaberSim, and I'm pretty sure I should use kind of a wider range of outcomes. But one thing you could do is you could change number of unique players. So I'm just curious what happens. If I take the same projections, the same everything, let's get rid of the player groups for a minute. Let's disable the player group for a minute. But let's then have number of unique players 2 and 35% range of outcomes. And let's not do a maximum total ownership, for example. Okay. Then I just wonder what it would end up looking like, that original build. I wonder if you get 100% Isner. No, here you actually would get 50% Bublik and only 43% Isner. So when you make it more about, ranges of outcomes, I suppose, that Isner does not become quite as much of a lock play. Okay. So again, it depends on how much risk you want to take. Oh, wait, excuse me. This one's bad because it's got 20% minimum here, and you do get about 60% Isner this way. So as you said, roto grinders and HQ, it's worse than SaberSim. Again, at the same time, it's better because what HQ will, I guess, force you to do, it does make you intelligently make decisions within the lineup builds, right? I mean, unless you want to just build straight optimals, you have to really utilize the range of outcomes and utilize the uniqueness and things like that to build upside lineups. So I guess in a way, I mean, if you're well versed in that, HQ really will help you with that. Where SaberSim, like for the other sports, it just kind of really just does all that for you. So if you are going to do tennis and you are going to use lineup HQ, you are going to have to familiarize yourself with those types of settings. And Rhodey's really good at that. Bobby's really good at that. I'm getting better, so we can all help you with that. But I don't know. Hopefully this helped. Hopefully this didn't confuse you. hopefully you took this for more than just an analysis of today's slate. But that's the way I build, and that's the way I'm going to do it for today. Again, I don't know exactly what lineups I'm going to end up doing, but that's the process I'm going to be engaging in to get my lineups rolling. And that'll do it. Good luck.